The first one, and I put this first on purpose, know that you are God's beloved child. Beloved child. So carry yourself with dignity and self-respect. This is so foundational, isn't it? Because you are God's beloved child, and as you really absorb that, and as you know that, you can start carrying yourself with dignity and self-respect. And what happens when we don't have that dignity and self-respect? Some of you have been there. I've been there in the past. You let yourself be abused. You let yourself be emotionally abused, talked to in a disgusting way. Your husband's doing things that are really inappropriate. You're like, ooh, and you let it happen because you're just like, ooh, I don't know what to do. No, woe is me. But you don't have any dignity and self-respect. I know none of you ever sounded like that, but I've sounded like that. And so I don't think this is God's plan for us. I know that is not God's plan for any of you beautiful women. Romans 9:25, God's talking in this section of the Bible. He's referring back to an Old Testament passage where people that were turned away from God, he drew to himself, he drew them back to himself, and he says, her who was not beloved, I will call beloved. I love that. Her who was not, I know it's kind of a weird wording, but her who was not beloved, I will call beloved. So this is who you are. And then Proverbs 31 is that, if you've ever read Proverbs 31, it's the description of the noble wife, it's just this excellent noble wife. And in verse 25 it says, she is clothed with strength and dignity. Number 2 Bible principle, speak life and encouragement to your husband. Life and encouragement to your husband as you partner with him in advancing God's kingdom here on earth. Catch that vision. Is that not kind of exciting? That you're going to have this impact in your generation to draw more and more people to Christ, to draw your children to Christ, and your children's children to Christ. This is why you're partnering with your husband to advance God's kingdom here on earth. But your husband, in case you didn't know it, is very insecure. Most men do not tell you, I'm really insecure. Most men would never admit that. But I've read all these studies and research of anonymous surveys of men, and they're terribly insecure. So if they're supposed to be advancing God's kingdom, but they're terribly insecure, this is where we have this helper role to speak life to our men, to speak encouragement to our men. Proverbs 18:21. Proverbs 18:21. The power of life and death is in the tongue. So speak words of life and encouragement to your husband. Third principle, ask God how to pray for your husband and then become a prayer warrior. A prayer warrior. Colossians 4:2 says, devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful. Number 4, Bible principle, show respect to your husband and allow him to lead your family as long as he's leading in a God-honoring way. Respect is humongous for men. I never understood this. I still am a little bit dull in this area sometimes, but respect is like oxygen to your husband. And I always thought, especially in my first marriage, I thought, well, I don't respect him. And so I was like, done, I don't respect him. Well, I've learned since then that it's not a feeling. It is not a feeling. It's a decision to act respectfully toward him. God is asking you to choose to act respectfully toward your husband. What does that mean? That means you don't roll your eyes at him all the time. That means you don't give the big exasperated sigh like, that communicates like you're a moron. You don't do the moron sigh. That means that you don't criticize every thought he has, that you don't correct him at every turn, that you don't tell him what to do because you're so much smarter than him all the time. Let's work to show our men respect. Ephesians 5:33 is a really direct command to wives. It simply says the wife must respect her husband. Pretty clear. What about the submission business? That's a whole other ballgame, and I think I'd like to devote a whole lesson to submission, but let me just say this much. Respect is closely tied to your submissive attitude of being willing to allow him to lead, unless he's leading you in a very, ungodly direction. Colossians 3:18 is the clearest verse on this. It says, wives, submit yourself to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Okay, let's move to the next one, which is, I think, number 5. Choose to be gentle, compassionate, and peaceful with your husband. Choose to be gentle, compassionate, and peaceful with your husband. 1 Peter 3, verse 4 is speaking to wives about their beauty, and it says it should be that of your inner self, that of the gentle and quiet spirit. And this one has been confusing to me over the years too, but it doesn't mean you have to change your personality. I'm kind of a spunky, vivacious person, and when I first read this, it's like, oh my word, I'm supposed to change my personality now? No, not necessarily. But a man really does love a wife who has a peaceful, inner self that isn't all in chaos and in turmoil inside and is all frazzled and frustrated, biting everyone's head off. Get the image of that, right? So what about looking at your schedule? Are you overscheduled? Do you need to cut back on some things so that you're not all frazzled and frustrated and biting everyone's head off, right? Do you need to cut something out? Do you need to spend more time with God so that you find just a centering peace in your day instead of running all over the place? Do you need to cut back on the kids' activities? Whatever it might be that would cause you to be peaceful inside. And choosing to speak gently to your husband. Number 6 is something that many of you women need to know. I wish I'd have known Bible principle number 6 in my first marriage. Things probably would have turned out radically differently, but I was ill-equipped, and you'll never have that excuse again that you're ill-equipped, because Bible principle number 6 will equip you in the event that your husband is sinning against you. If your husband is sinning against you, take action. And the action does not mean just feeling self-pity and whining. That does not constitute the kind of action that I am talking about. Take action. Luke 17:3 says, if your brother sins, rebuke him. And if he repents, forgive him. Wow, I wish I would have seen that verse. It says, if someone's sinning against you, rebuke them. If they repent, forgive them. And then look at Matthew 18, starting in verse 15. It's a long section here, but I almost have it memorized by accident because I've just said it so many times. It basically says, if your brother is sinning against you, go to him just between the two of you and show him his fault. And I'm kind of slowing this down, but just between the two of you, go to him and explain the problem. Show him his fault. And it says, if he listens to you, great, you've won him over. If not, if he will not listen, take one or two others along with you. And again, you're going to him now with more people and saying, basically, this is a problem, whatever it might be. That he's driving home drunk every night, that he's being verbally abusive to you, that he's looking at pornography, that he's spending time alone with other women. Whatever the thing is, if he won't listen when you come to him directly and say, this is the problem, and I need it to stop, and will you seek help, or whatever, and if he won't listen, the Bible says you bring more people into this. And if he still won't listen, it says that you bring to the church. And if he still won't listen, then it says that you treat him as a pagan or a tax collector. Now let me explain how the Jewish people treated pagans and tax collectors at the time of this teaching that Jesus gave. The Jewish people shunned pagans and tax collectors. And I believe what Jesus is trying to tell us here is that if someone is sinning against you, and you've gone to them, and you've lovingly and gently but firmly said, this is a problem. Something needs to change here. This cannot keep going on like this. And if they won't listen, and then you bring in more people, and that might be, in our day and age, it could be a pastor, it could be a counselor, it could be an actual intervention where you've got maybe parents involved and everything. And if this person just won't listen, if your husband just will not change, and he continues sinning against you, sinning against you, sinning against you, that at the end of the day, you might have to, in a sense, shun them. But not out of being mean and vicious. It's because it's called tough love, right? Have we heard that expression? Where you have maybe even a separation possibly to say, this can't continue like this. I love you, but I will not continue on like this. We'll talk about this in detail in another lesson, but let's get to principle 7. This is connected to the first one though. Do not allow resentment to take poison, or to poison your heart, but work through issues and then forgive your husband for his imperfections. You tend to have this resentment piece, right? And it's just a poison. No one even likes to be around us when we are filled with resentment. In fact, Hebrews 12:15 says, do not let any bitter root grow up among you to cause trouble and defile many. And that's what bitterness is. It's it just takes root and it defiles everyone in its path. So, Bitterness and resentment is a choice. You just get to give it over to God. Sometimes I have to give it over to God every day. For some people in my past that I can find that resentment just starting to rise again. I'm like, Lord, I give it to you. I give them to you. And then I actually often will pray for their blessing, because it's hard to be resentful when you're praying for someone to be blessed. Number 8. I know some of you are excited about this and some of you are not excited about this one. Build a vibrant sex life with your husband and allow him to be your sexual hero. Those who have attended a while know how to fill in that blank. Your sexual hero. Okay, I know this is sort of weird. Men again, this is an area where they're so insecure and they long to be your sexual hero. When men were asked if you could have all the sex you wanted with your wife, she willingly gave you sex at the drop of a hat anytime you wanted, would you be happy? And the majority of them said no. They would only be happy if she basically enthusiastically wanted to have sex with them, that they felt desired by her, that he was the sexual hero for her. So, what does that mean for you? I don't know what it means for each one of you, but your husband longs to be your sexual hero. Think about that with God. I think God can handle these thoughts. Pretty sure he designed sex, so he's okay. But maybe you can actually brainstorm with God. Like, Lord, how do I make this work? What does this mean? How am I supposed to have him be my sexual hero? I bet you God will give you some ideas. I wrote down 1 Corinthians 7. I might not read it all right now, but it basically talks about not depriving each other sexually, because it gives Satan a foothold because of your lack of self-control if you're not fulfilling each other sexually. Number 9, manage your household so that it is peaceful, tidy, and organized. I'm not saying you need to do everything, because a lot of you are working outside the home, but come up with a plan. This lady that I'm talking about, that I'm referencing, she came up with a sticker chart for her and her husband. I mean, she made it fun. She had a sticker chart. You do this, I'll pick up this, you pick up the bedrooms on Monday, I'll pick up the kitchen on Monday and Thursday, or whatever. I don't know. She had a sticker chart because she didn't need to do everything personally. She just came up with a plan to keep the home tight. Proverbs 31:27. This is talking about that noble Proverbs 31 woman. In Proverbs 31:27, it says, she watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. All right, number 10. I had to have this one in there because this is just huge. Actively consider the interests of your husband and not just your own desires and opinions. Even though that does seem to be the most important thing to you, doesn't it? Right? But this was like this eye-opener for my husband and I. This was probably like 3 or 4 years ago. We were already well into our marriage, and we were reading this verse, and all of a sudden it was like ding, 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 and God just I don't know, opened up the doors for us on this principle that I know, what if I don't make everything just about me? Oh, and I actually look for ways to bless my husband, like actively look for ways to bless him. And what if we were to actually look for ways to bless me, although I can't control that, but I can control what I do? And what if I actually try to consider his opinion and even his perspective on things? Because usually I just dismiss it, and I don't agree with it, because obviously he's wrong, right? I mean, don't you? But I thought, well, what if I just even listen to his perspective and think, well, he might have a thought or a feeling that could have some validity. And so I started approaching it like that, and it changed the dynamics of our marriage incredibly. In fact, we coined this as the secret sauce for our marriage. And we did a whole lesson on the secret sauce for your marriage. Because this, Philippians 2:4, it says, each of you should consider not only his own interests, but the interests of others. And when you start doing that in a marriage, it is just huge.